to open up text to chat? No. I'm going to do call-in number. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. It's a wonderful day. It's a wonderful day. It's a wonderful day. I'm here with the good people of the village of Mount Solon, Virginia. FM 102.3. Well, I just got the latest spam into my folder. And in this issue, Apple Google released first SDKs and APIs for COVID contact tracing. That means programmers in the village of Mount Solon, rev up the engines, get your favorite platform, Android or, well, you know, the iPhone, and start creating that app so you can know where the village of Mount Solon people are at any time based on the phone. So now, what are we going to have? We have COVID, right? Secret use of phones. So we're back to going to what is called payphones. So everybody in the village of Mount Solon, get yourself one of them fancy dancy iPhones. Buy one of those on the internet cheap payphone machines. And there is a way to use your phone with a payphone. And people can come by, drop coins in there, and make a conversation happen. We're right back to the payphone, my friends. So unless you want the good people of Mount Solon, the village that is, tracking you and everywhere you go, come on in, city people. Because as soon as the city people show up in here and we've got the apps to track, well, we're all set, right? Come on, man. SDKs, APIs, SDKs. They're available. Well, you know, you got to develop. So they got to give you access to stuff. Right? So, I guess the Smith, he's got a few bucks in his pocket. Maybe one of the good people of Virginia up here in the village of Mount Solon, Virginia, should roar on down to Smith's office and try to get that contract to develop that out-of-towner tracking devices, so we all know where they are. And then, you know, us here in the village, we'll just use payphones. We'll travel around without our phones, and then if we have to, we got the backup phone that's turned off, always charged, and inside of what is called a Faraday cage. And if you don't know what a Faraday cage is, my friends, all you have to do is ask everybody. And eventually you'll tell you it exists down there at the Verona or Middle River, right? That's the Faraday cage. That's not the Faraday cage. I'm making fun. Faraday cage is a way of shielding an electronic device from signals. Whether that signal is a nuclear blast or that signal is a cell tower trying to get in touch with you. Yeah, a little bit of tonic water for everybody there. That's what a Faraday cage is, tonic water. Yeah. There's a reason that tonic water is well, there's a good reason that we have tonic water and why it's available to all of us. And if you know why tonic water exists, then come on down here to the square anytime you want and explain it to me. And if you are correct, I will give you the grand prize of one item. Yes, you too can win one item. An item. Yeah, it's ITEM, an item. Well, you know, free men and women all have at least one item. They have the I. And as soon as you cannot control your I, you're property of somebody else. So, I don't know how anybody could be happy being the property of somebody else unless somehow your mind is broken and that'll make you comfortable. But I can't empathize. I can't see that from any other position. No. Just don't see it. I don't see it. Just don't. Anyway, Kevin Kelly's 68 bits of unsolicited advice for happiness. Well, thank you, Kevin. 68 bits. That's right. What is 68 bits? I know. Climate activists call for Michael Moore film to be deplatformed. Oh man, that's a big flip. Hey, look at that. Michael Moore is now, whoa. What? He's done something to buck somebody else in climate? Now, Michael Moore smells the wind. And that wind comes out of his ass. Michael Moore, the opportunist filmmaker, is being threatened with deplatformation by people who say, you know what? We better act fast. We better act right away. I'm telling you, you don't quite understand the severity. If we do not take our hands, put them in our neighbor's pocket, and take their earnings from them, the climate will change. Yeah, Al Gore pioneered that one. No, he didn't. Before Al Gore, there was the 1970s. When I was growing up, I was told to get an ice pick and cleats because I'm going to have to climb ice in Virginia. I'd have to pick my way out of my casa in the mornings. We were gonna enjoy the ravishes of what is called a glacier. The glacier was coming. The glacier was coming. Amazon used data from third-party sellers to create knockoff products. Yeah, Sears did it too. But, you know, Montgomery Ward's did that. I don't know. Maybe even Macy's has done that because, yeah, this is kind of the way they are. So, create knockoff products. Okay, the data that they used is that Amazon saw how much product was going through their store shelves and said, you know what? We can offer the same product at a reduced price to the customer. Well, and then when everybody else can't match our price for the same quality, we'll raise the price back up and we'll do that much better. What do you think, board members with shares in the company called Amazon? Should we go ahead, use the information we have, start developing our own product lines? Well, that is a monopoly, and they're using monopoly practices to squish out their competition, right, Walmart? Walmart? Hey, how's that social distancing working for you, Walmart? Insane, man. I'm going to tell you something. Everybody better have their head on a swivel and make sure that somebody who is spraying things doesn't spray you. Know your neighbor when you're in line, my friends. Don't be afraid to walk away. Ain't nothing inside any store or any facility that's more important than your life. All right? Donald is telling you the truth. Watch his speeches on the internet. Everybody should pay attention to the governor on his speeches on the internet, not the news. Everybody should pay attention to any other official who gets in front of seals and flags and runs their pie hole. Seals and flags. That's right. Augusta County seal. We got the Commonwealth seal. Then we have the different flags. Augusta County has its flag. May I encourage everybody to go down and visit the secretary of the county manager and place an order for a flag and pin. You need a flag and pin. You want a flag and then you want the pin, the seal. You want to get a seal from them. Yeah, man, it's everybody in Augusta. Everybody. We must all carry the shield of Augusta County. That's right, man. You know, hey, we got an Augusta County flag. We have an Augusta County seal. If you own property down here and you think you're a stakeholder in the survivability of our community, then you need to go down there, visit the bureaucrat in charge. I don't know who it is anymore in the way of secretaries, but everybody needs to go get the seal and flag. And hey, look, it costs money. That's right. You have to invest in your freedom. Nobody's going to give you freedom. You have to work will set you free, son of a bitch. I mean, I know the Germans used that. I know that. And then there were people who indentured themselves knowing that work would set them free. So they'd indenture themselves, and then they'd work, and then they'd be free again. Now, maybe sometimes they didn't want to be free on their own, and they weren't motivated until they became indentured. But that's some of the most dangerous work you can do, is indenturing yourself on the frontiers of exploration and colonization. We're still discussing it. Donald Trump created the Space Force, and the Space Force is designed to do one thing. It's to explore and to colonize. And people who want you to live in a box, in a prison, demonize the word colonize. Yeah, well, we all have to colonize and occasionally. That's what's going on with the Sharia law inside the United States of America. America's being colonized by Sharia people. We had the common law, they have the Sharia law. And then some of them have the Noahic law. Noah's law. China arrests volunteers who upload coronavirus data to GitHub. 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 GitHub is a way to publicly share things. Now, I do publicly share things, and I use a program. Here, Mousy. It is called, it's D. Go to my library. DIIGO. Diigo. DIIGO.com. Diigo. That's it. Anybody in the area who knows anything knows Diigo. And there's the Mount Solon Library. The Village of Mount Solon Library. I'm going to go ahead and create that. I'm not going to do it right this second. Let me pull out my notebook of life. And here we go. I have my notebook of life, and it's things that I can do. Write down info all the time. Today's date. Yeah, we can mark the date. I will mark the date. You know what? I don't have my calendar here. I have a clock that tells me at the sink in the morning what day it is and the date. That's just so in case I need to know. Well, I'm afraid. No. Today is Wednesday, May 6, 2020. We're talking about the DIIGO.com library. The Village of Mount Solon. Mount Solon. That's it. So the public library will be either the Village of Mount Solon or Mount Solon. And that way, when I'm doing something here on FM 102.3 and you just happen to be listening and you got a pen and a paper next to you, because I know I used to keep a pen and paper next to me when I watched television, because I never knew if I wanted to place an order with one of them adverts. That's the way to go. The adverts. Everybody needs an advert. I got adverts. I got an advert. Currently here at FM 102.3, we're sponsored by the good graces of God. Yes, I understand that if it wasn't for him, I would have nothing that I have today, and I would be miserable. Instead of being one of the more happy people on planet, and the fact that I have life, liberty, and I have property, it brings me happiness. And it makes me gleeful when I see my neighbors profit. Yes. I live in a good community where people have property and they can do what they want with it. And they play by the golden rules, because I don't trespass on my neighbors, and I don't expect my neighbors to trespass on me. The door is open to talk. And if you don't want to talk, completely understand. You don't have to answer your door. And you don't have to answer me back when I say something. It happens all the time, all over this planet. I've been all over this world, and people, when I've said hello, look at me as if I spat fire on them. So, with that in mind, DIIGO.com. Everybody should go there and create a library so you can share information with your relatives easily without Facebook. Now, let me explain something to you. Liberty comes with a price. Freedom is expensive. And if you think that you should be giving stuff for free, keep using Facebook. Because Facebook is guaranteed to extract something out of you, because nothing is free in this world. Nothing. Nothing. You got to ask yourself, why is the IRS trying to get everybody who doesn't file to register? Why are they getting you to register? They're paying you to register. Why did you want to register? You know, so the only way it would work is if you can register a residence. I suspect that's it. And now we're going to get a true count of property. Those who have registered and gotten paid. True count of property, man. Shit happens. A lot of us who are out here playing by the rules, we've been registered for a long, long time. We hate being registered. We fight being registered. We know it's wrong. But, you know, there's just so much peer pressure and so many people that think it's okay to covet their neighbor's life. And then they think it's so okay to covet their neighbor's life that they've created a situation where they can go vote in secret to take your property. A man is not known by his character and who he chooses to elect. Nah, he gives his secret snitch opinion at the poll. He goes to the poll. And then the people who control the poll, it's irrelevant how many of you actually go along with stealing from your neighbor. If they want to steal this time, they're going to steal this time. Because anything done in the dark is of Satan. He runs wild when the sun goes down. The Son of God protects us all because we can see. We are not gifted with the night vision. The night vision belongs to the devil. That's why the devil wears black. I've seen it in Clint Eastwood movies, so it has to be true. All right. DIIGO.com. There, I said it 3 times. Ex-Aussie high-ranking public servant refuses to install COVID tracking app. Aussie. All right, mate. Now, Australia's got an issue. They gave up their guns. They lost their leatherneck motherfucker who everybody thought would stand firm and not give up his rifle. They came and killed him. Update on the EasyDNS Fold at Home team. Now, EasyDNS. I have no clue what that is, and everybody should look it up maybe. I'm not going to. Let me see. Let me see what it is. I can. Tanks.org sales. Right. Climate activists. Amazon. I'm reading that. China. Arrest volunteers. Ex-Aussie. Okay, I don't care. Okay. Thanks to everyone pitching in to supply computing power for crunching coronavirus data via Fold at Home. The EasyDNS team rank is now up at 1,338 across 6,451 work units. We have nodes contributing more than 1 million credits. All right, thanks to all of you. If you're interested in joining in, head over to foldingathome.org. I do not know what it is. But this is all from a spam, by the way. So I'm reading propaganda, baby. And Axis of Easy this week, our second e-salon, and more. Yes, yes, yes. Yes, yes, yes. It is what it is. And don't forget, great value. Bridgewater Foods, great value markets. Visit our, Bridgewater Foods Mother Day savings. 80% lean beef, ground, $2.38 a pound. Hey, watermelons are starting to come in, seedless. Beefsteak tomatoes, $1.48 a pound. Everybody, if you ain't got it, and you don't think you really don't know if that garden's going to make it, because in my heart, I'm afraid we're not going to have a summer. It's very weird to me. Something's off. Something's a kittywampus. Patrick thinks there might be messing with the weather. I do not know if that is true. I do not know if that is true. I do not know. I just know that my gut says something's weird. I don't know. What does your guts feel, everybody? Oh, let's see. Huh.
Dr. Judy, although I have talked to you before for the International Tribunal of Natural Justice, I've wanted to do a personal interview in part to get to questions that nobody else has asked. So let me just start for our audience that may not know you as well as they should. Just describe for us your background, your birth to here in less than 2 minutes.
Okay, I was born in Flint, Michigan, and moved to Washington, D.C. when I was 10 years old. That's where my mother was born, so 417 Constitution Avenue. That was 1968, a really hectic time with Martin Luther King getting shot and then Bobby Kennedy getting shot June 4th. So we moved out to the suburbs in Northern Virginia. I grew up there. Basically, my mom was a secretary in the government. I grew up there, went to University of Virginia, graduated with a degree in chemistry and biology. Mainly wanted to cure cancer because my grandfather died of lung cancer in that tumultuous time when I was about 12 or 13 years old. So I went right after college, went to University of Virginia went to the National Cancer Institute in Frederick, Maryland, to purify the first immune therapy for cancer, which was interferon alpha. It was that journey that started with me looking at immune responses, antiviral responses, and infectious disease. Went to the biological response modifiers program right there at Fort Detrick. Worked for Dr. Frank Ruscetti, who discovered the first cancer-causing viruses, retroviruses, human retroviruses. And we embarked on a 35-year journey together in one form or another, collaboratively or directly working for him. That started with my PhD, which changed the paradigm for HIV/AIDS because it said that we were targeting the wrong immune response. And so we began looking at patterns of immune response in infectious disease. In 2009, we isolated a third family of human disease-causing retroviruses. It was a family that was from a mouse leukemia, mouse cancer-causing viruses.
Let me just interrupt really quickly. You earned a PhD in there somewhere in the 90s?
1991, my PhD So 1980 was when I started working at Cancer Research. 1983 through 91 did work like confirming HIV isolation that Luc Montagnier had called lymphadenopathy virus, or LAV. Then worked on mechanisms of how disease or LAV causes disease, and got my PhD on November 14th, 1991 from George Washington University. And it changed everything in AIDS because it says we were targeting and treating the wrong cell, and that really the orchestrator of HIV AIDS was the monocyte macrophage and innate immune response, the front line. And when we did that, you could have HIV and never get AIDS.
So let's go to a really macro level. Everybody has always had this public perception that scientists are very pure and they have integrity and they're serving the public interest. And I know you've had many positive experiences along the way, but you've also had some negative experiences. If you had to give the integrity of American medicine and the integrity of American science a letter grade, taking everything into account, where would it be, and what's your overall evaluation if you were talking to President Trump today about where we are in terms of the science and medicine competence and integrity?
Well, the science and medicine competence integrity for the general body, I would give a solid A. But for the top of science, for the heads of the journals, the pharmaceutical companies, the NIH, the public health, I would give an F. They're absolutely, totally corrupt. And that really started back in 1983. When I started working for Frank Ruscetti, he had been fired from Bob Gallo's lab, literally because he was getting too much credit for his discoveries of what was interleukin-2, then called T-cell growth factor, and the first human retrovirus causing cancer, that's HDLV1. So from that day on, I saw how the heads of the government and the heads of the industry prevented the public from really understanding the depths of the science. And then I call it propaganda masquerading as science, where the journals and the editors keep the important discoveries or manipulate them with editorials in such a way as to say they don't say what they said, if that truth is damning to their purpose and their goals, and of course their patents and money, which again, it was right around 1983 where the Bayh-Dole Act, B-A-Y-H, Dole, Bob Dole and Senator Bayh from Utah, and I don't remember where Bob was at the time, maybe Virginia, but that act allowed government researchers to patent their work. And this to me was horrific because it was, the taxpayers pay for everything I do, my education, turning on the lights, buying the switch. So the front line, the military troops are absolutely the most hardworking, with the most integrity, brilliant people in the world. But the gatekeepers, the generals, are the worst and the most corrupt. And it's been 40 years of my experience.
Well, let me divide that into two additional questions. It seems like there's every reason for the president to rescind all of the patents that were paid for by the U.S. taxpayer. Is that something that could reasonably be proposed to an honest Congress that is not being bribed and blackmailed?
Yes, that's one of the things I would tell President. The two key things he could do to clean up everything is repeal that Bayh-Dole Act, because that's the taxpayers' money that's being used nefariously, as we know now, to fund Wuhan, China, development of things which are against public health and our health. And I can list many of those. And then the second thing is repeal the 1986 National Vaccine Injury Compensation Act, which Ronald Reagan, when he signed it, said was unconstitutional. And that act removes all liability from manufacturers, and it's been diluted and corrupted to the point where in 2011 it removed all liability from everything. So the injured have no recourse. Essentially, that vaccine court has no discovery. It's not a true court. There's a special master who's not even a lawyer or a judge, who runs the entire, everything in his power for the Department of Justice and the HHS to make sure vaccines are presumed innocent at all costs, that they never cause injury, even though when that act was signed.
I'm completely with you, and I apologize to my audience. We've lost a couple of points of your signal, but we'll just proceed. It sounds like money has corrupted everything. And from where I sit, vaccines have never been properly tested. They should not be mandatory. I have the impression that anyone who says that if you haven't been vaccinated, you're a threat is an idiot, because if you've been vaccinated and it works, then you're not a threat. So tell us about money in science, money in medicine. What is it that's allowing or what is it that's incentivizing the top people in the journals and everything to basically cheat the public and murder people?
Well, the journals, everything is money. The grants, every major university, every college, everything. No investigator can have an established career or a stellar career unless they have those NIH grants or those government grants from DOD, Department of Defense, everything. It's all about money. And the journals are essentially commercials for big pharma. They pay a lot of money. They have an impact factor that was applied somewhere in the 90s, where depending on the impact factor of the journals you publish in determines your career, basically the trajectory, whether or not you get funding, whether that what you publish matters. So they have control of everything. The peer-reviewed system is totally broken. It's more like competitor review. So you send these grant proposals which are very detailed in, and basically the heads of the government decide if they'll be funded based on the fact that they're too dangerous, you're getting too close to discoveries, and this is similar to what happens in vaccine court. Cytokine storms never cause vaccine injury, and they're at the heart of it, as is COVID-19. And yet a cytokine storm can exist with an infectious disease, but not with a vaccine. And that's exactly what a vaccine is intended to do, mimic an infection. So at every level, the money controls. And this is where, every level of the government, in order to publish a paper as a government worker, you have to submit it through channels, meaning like for instance, I worked for the NCI and Dr. Rossetti when our 2009 paper came up. He did not submit that through the channels. If he had, the FDA would have had to sign off on it. The CDC would have had to sign off it. Every institute of the NIH would have to sign off on it. And it's this corrupt little political to keep a major discovery from happening, because in the days of HIV/AIDS there and the controversy that was generated because of Bob Gallo and Tony Fauci's corruption there with respect to Luc Montagnier, forevermore, the government holds secret meetings off post, as we know with William Thompson, the CDC employer. So they had a little data burning party on a Saturday, or they hold in Washington there in the NIH, they don't hold things on government sites. They go to a resort called Arlie, A-R-L-I-E, you may know of in Northern Virginia. And they hold these secret meetings like we know Simpson would and other things. And I participated in those meetings, and they're called conferences. And they matter to your career as you participate, but of course what I learned between 2000 and 10 and present date in the last decade tells me at every level we're being controlled almost by spies. I don't know how to say that.
Yeah, no, I'm with you. Let me add to that I understand from people who do get government grants that they're also not allowed to share their work while it's in progress. That's very controlled. Is that correct?
You're supposed to keep a level of confidentiality with respect to publications, and your work is not valid until you publish it. So I would have to patent my work or present it to my lawyers before I gave any public disclosure. So, and again, before the Bayh-Dole Act, you're exactly right. With everything going through channels and keeping research secret till it's done part of the funding for those grants. That's an extremely large problem that didn't happen when I was in the biological response fires program, which was MDs, PhDs, everyone you could think of working together. It was a fabulous program. Huge gains. That's where we confirmed the isolation of HIV and did the first treatments, the development of peptide T. All of that got captured and changed when the Bayh-Dole Act changed the patent, and you had to present all your data. If you even gave it at a public talk, it had to be reviewed by lawyers.
Okay, I really get this, and I think your recommendations to the president are excellent. I hope that I'll have an open source agency one day, and we're going to change some stuff to include making everything open and anything paid for by the taxpayer is in the public domain. So let me ask you about Fauci. I mean, I've been asked multiple times, why isn't Fauci at Guantanamo? And so I have two questions for you. The first question is, has anyone reported Fauci to the Inspector General?
Well, not directly Fauci, but when this happened to me with respect to the work Fauci funded and the corruption in the multi-center study that was published in 2012 by Ian Lipkin as senior author, we did, as soon as, actually while I was jailed and science was trying to force the retraction, Frank Ruscetti filed an OIG report. He was called on the phone a month or so later and told by both my lawyer and the Inspector General office to withdraw that because it would, quote, go better for me. And at that time, I was being held under fake criminal charges. We didn't know what was going on, so Frank Ruscetti withdrew it. And we, again, we've talked at every level to the FBI. The OIG is another part of the plague of corruption. They're not in the interest of the scientists. And in fact, just as the FBI attempted to do to me and did to me, they would turn it on you. If you go to the OIG, they would turn around and blame you. And I've seen that in several investigators in cases against the corrupt old boys network, one involving Nobel laureate David Baltimore. Similar problem.
You know, I'm seeing exactly the same thing everywhere else. I mean, Sidney Powell has written License to Lie about prosecutorial, judicial, and FBI misconduct. There's a book on the Terror Factory about how the FBI is manipulating terror cases, making them up, and prosecuting people. Now you have the Securities and Exchange Commission, where if a victim corporation goes in and says, I'm being naked short selling, they turn around and they fabricate financial fraud charges against the person making the complaint. So I salute you, Dr. Judy. I think this is your time. And I do believe that the Attorney General needs to purge all of these offices of the Inspector General. So one second question about Fauci. I don't know if he's a doctor or not. Does he have a medical license? And if he does, has anyone reported him to the medical board for being a moron, or actually for being corrupt? He's not a moron.
Right. Well, he has an MD. But whether he has a license to practice, in his bureaucratic position, he hasn't seen patients for decades. It's not what he does. So I don't know if he has a license to practice, or if anybody's ever tried to practice him, because clearly he has misrepresented data, causing, the injury and deaths of probably 50 million Americans over the last 4 decades, and worldwide, God only knows.
Did you ever talk to a lawyer about, I think it's called false imprisonment, but obviously you were defamed. There was tortuous interference against your ethical professional practice. You were held against your will on false charges. Did you ever talk to a lawyer about striking back?
Oh, absolutely. I filed a KETAM, a whistleblower, a wrongful termination, a retaliation lawsuit, and named all of the people involved, including, NIAID, which would include Fauci, Ian Lipkin, the people in the Blood Systems Research Institute and the National Heart, Lung, and Blood Institute, who perpetrated the fraud and retaliation against me and made those phone calls. Harold Varmus, the Nobel laureate who modified the multi-center study to make it impossible. Even Tony Fauci for saying I was a fugitive from justice and forbidding me from coming into an NIH lab to do the study. That case. That whistleblower case was held under seal for 5 years by the Nevada Attorney General. It was filed in California, and then the jurisdiction moved where I had no lawyer. The lawyer who helped me with that case, Michael R. Hugo, who actually wrote a lot of the law with respect to the Vaccine Injury Compensation Act, and he's featured in our book, Plague of Corruption, in telling these stories. Was literally prevented from helping me once because he couldn't practice law in Nevada. So they moved the jurisdiction from California.
So what happened? What happened with that lawsuit? Where is it at now?
It was held under seal for 5 years. 5 years, meaning I couldn't get a lawyer, couldn't say I had a lawsuit, couldn't do anything about it until the government decided it wanted to prosecute.
Do we know the names of the individuals in Nevada that we can hunt down and bring to justice?
Yes.
All right. What are their names?
Well, the assistant attorney general was Troy Flake, who presided over the case. They moved him off of the case a few months ago. So I forgot some of the names. Robert Jones is the head judge there. I have an entire list of them, and my attorney, my criminal attorney here, who protects me against the Nevada Attorney General and the FBI. He's not my criminal attorney because there never were charges on the fake arrest, the false arrest. He's protecting me from the authorities, from the FBI. His name is David J. Folan, and we could talk to him online as well.
Does your book, which I want to close with a question about your book and what it says and so forth, does your book name the names of the people who unlawfully prosecuted you?
The first book does, yes. Plague does. Plague of Corruption goes into more of what happened with that, the people who unlawfully arrested me, as Michael Hugo discovered them watching my house and planting so-called evidence and setting up the crime. And it names the journal Science. So the journal Science clearly did a 2-year, 23 article. Watch Dr. Judy Go to send a clear message to every scientist who ever thought about doing this type of research again.
So is your case now active, or are you looking for lawyers who can bring a case against everybody who obviously, clearly, if I were a member of the jury, all of these people would be sent to the gas chamber. So yeah. Where are you now in seeking legal justice?
That case was dropped 3 days after I gave the Truth About Cancer talk called Persecution and Cover-Up, October 12th of 2019, without prejudice. So I have to start over on a RICO, a larger racketeering and conspiracy. And yes, I'm looking for lawyers and I'm looking for help. And we have thousands of pages of documents that we can apply from that very case. And I'm told there's no statute of limitation on the kind of conspiracy and the kind of extortion that occurred over the last decade, to me and many others who simply try to do honest research and publish it to save the public.
Well, then let's hope that people watching this interview know some really high-powered lawyers who would like to work on contingency. Let's go straight to 40% contingency, but let's fry these people. Now, let's end this interview with you by asking you to talk about your book. And I'm embarrassed to say I wasn't aware of the second book. So let's end by your talking about your two books and what you were trying to communicate with each of those books very, very briefly, because we're going to put the covers of your books up and we're going to point people to where they can buy them. So tell us about your two books, and then we'll end by where do you want to go next after we fry the people who persecuted you?
Well, our first book is called Plague, one scientist's intrepid search into retroviruses and diseases like autism and ME/CFS. So that book was literally started the day of my false arrest outside my home in California. And it went through the science that we just discussed in a flashback mode. I'm thinking, what the hell is going on? Really? I mean, I had no idea it had anything to do with vaccines. So we talk about an innocent woman because people think our Justice Department, there's something, just about it. And it goes through the 5 days in jail where you can see what it's like to be held and threatened. And as a 53-year-old woman, while my 73-year-old, then the 73-year-old husband is frantically trying to find out what's going on with a bail hold, things honest people never see. So the second book essentially called Plague of Corruption. And we started it, Kent and I again, August 31st, 2014. Why is that significant? Our first book was in press. And I met Brian Hooker, who revealed the Thompson fraud with 13 years or whatever of FOIA. And he showed on the screen of a talk the notebook page from William Thompson saying, what are we going to do in William Thompson's handwriting about the problem with the blacks? And the light bulb went on with respect. As I started listening, I heard vaccines. I had no idea really. Our first book was all about a contaminated blood supply and what we learned in HIV to prevent that and how the government corrupted that. But then the explosion was the nightmare that is it dwarfed a 10% contaminated blood supply, which was still 25 times HIV/AIDS. And so this is what the level of corruption that I saw in vaccine courts. So the second book, Plague of Corruption, let everybody know what we discovered in 2011 was in fact at least 4 decades long plague of corruption perpetrated by this corrupt old boys network with Tony Fauci at the helm.
Talking about the bioweapons, vaccines or bio. And if you don't think they're weaponized, well, the enemy of knowing is believing. Solipsism, you don't believe it. You choose not to believe it. You don't want to know. You just choose not to believe it. Dear Lord, our God, with a deep thank you. There is power in the blood of Jesus Christ. Thank you.
Gentlemen, prepare to defend yourselves.